Welcome to Tech Driven Business, brought to you by Innovative Solution Partners. I'm honored to have Geoff Scott, CEO of ASUG, rejoin me to discuss the rapidly evolving landscape of AI within the SAP ecosystem, specifically focusing on the impact of partnerships like SAP and Microsoft's collaboration on Copilot and Joule. Listen in as we explore how these advancements will shape enterprise operations in 2025 and beyond, and why you can't afford to ignore this technological shift. Thanks for coming back on our podcast, Geoff. It's really nice to have you back. If you remember, you came on last year and we dove into this whole AI, Gen AI topic, and everybody remembers that, it was a very hot topic last year, and everybody was going in that direction. Now, fast forwarding everything to this year and say, hey, what is going on? And this year, SAP has had some major announcements, as we all know, about the partnerships that will leverage the power of AI within the SAP ecosystem. And what I see with the majority of SAP clients using Microsoft in the enterprises, there is a lot of opportunity in SAP and Microsoft, the whole partnership, especially around Copilot and SAP Joule. I believe it will make a big impact.
I'm surprised you have me back. I was very nervous. It's a year later. I was like, okay, this is never going to happen again. I disinvited myself from future podcasts.
Well, I have you back, and I am telling you that it is more exciting than what we were talking about last year. And I think this is what I want to get some thoughts on. Hey, what's going on? What's your take on how these partnerships are coming together? And what are we going to see in 2025?
Well, the good news is that what we see in 2025 is no apparent slowdown in any of this technology. But what's interesting is we in the SAP space are not necessarily meeting that challenge head on, and we probably are not moving as quickly as we should to capture the amount of opportunity that's out there. I think AI is real. It's going to continue to evolve at a furious pace. And that necessitates that we as technology practitioners determine how we best leverage that technology. You talked about Microsoft Copilot, Joule, right? I mean, AWS, Bedrock, Google Gemini. Now we've got other LLMs popping out all over the place, right? DeepSeek, which just popped up very quickly. Mm-hmm. So there's just a tremendous amount of movement here, and it's really hard to stay abreast of it. And I think the opportunity to jump in and start leveraging this is mission critical. And what I think it really necessitates, and you talked about some announcements from SAP that I think double or triple down on this notion that AI is here. So if you really want to take your SAP data and make it AI enabled using Joule or using any other series of tools, it's going to necessitate that we as technology practitioners start to do some fairly radical things with our data. Number one is we start to decustomize everywhere we can and move the responsibility for code back to SAP so that they are responsible for figuring out how to make the AI work, not us. So how do we over time decustomize? And how do we over time think about the necessity of adopting SaaS-based solutions such as SAP's public cloud? Many of our community members are implementing private cloud right now through Rise, which is great. But ultimately, if we recreate all those customizations downstream, then we have to figure out how to make them AI enabled. And I think that's where we're going to find ourselves under continuing amounts of stress as the business innovates faster and faster. We typically in the SAP ecosystem think about our innovations on a stair-step model. And what I mean by that is we do an upgrade, we sit on that upgrade for a couple of years, as long as we possibly can, and then we do an upgrade again. And the challenge I think that's going to present is that there's so much innovation happening and all these things are moving at such a speed that if we're not continuously innovating, we're going to find ourselves further and further behind. I'd like to see our SAP data be the sole source of truth inside our enterprises and an innovation goldmine. And to do that, I think we have to decustomize. I think we have to be able to innovate faster. I think we have to be able to look at this data, do a lot more work around archiving and getting the old stuff swept up and moved out, master data is going to become a major, major opportunity for all of us. And if we do all those things really, really well, we will have a fighting chance at making our enterprises very savvy and on top of the latest trends versus trying to perpetually catch up.
It's a race, the way I look at it. And I think you summed it up very well. And I think that leads me to my question into this whole topic of collaboration. Let's take that, right? Now, what would you tell your SAP users about the power of Microsoft and SAP's collaboration? How will it positively impact their day-to-day operations? Let's start with that.
Well, I think you set this up really well. We know from an ASUG research perspective that most SAP customers are also Microsoft customers. And that
Mhm.
partnership has gone back almost as long as SAP and Microsoft have been in business. There's some pictures I've seen
Yes.
of Bill Gates and Hasso Plattner, the two founders of both organizations, working together early on. So this is a partnership that goes back a long, long time, and it's a tremendously powerful partnership. And it indicates to me that these are organizations that work very well together, very closely together, and
Yeah.
collaborate. I mean, almost everyone I know who works in SAP also uses Excel spreadsheets, also uses PowerPoint slides, also creates
Yep.
Word documents. I do these almost every single day. It makes perfect sense to me that a tool such as Microsoft Copilot and SAP's Joule would be working in harmony together. And I think we're seeing some interesting innovation from both organizations where they're able to demonstrate that. I saw some really cool RAG based technologies a few weeks ago where a Copilot can reach out and grab some data from SAP and bring it back. Likewise, Joule is being able to show some similar capabilities. For most customers, as much as we'd like to have one AI tool, I just don't think that that's going to be the way this works. I think we're going to have multiple, which
Yeah.
which makes the enterprise architect's role that much more challenging because they're going to have to figure out how to integrate these tools, when these tools are best used, how they're used, and how do we as organizations get value from them.
Absolutely. And if you take this a step further, right, the hype around agentic
Mm.
AI, everybody's talking about agents. What are you seeing in the marketplace? What is your take? How are SAP users benefiting from agentic AI within their organizations?
As it relates specifically to the SAP ecosystem, my perception, may be right or wrong, probably more wrong than right, is that many of them are investigating and researching. I haven't necessarily seen any specific in production customer running agentic AI using SAP yet. Is it coming? I think
Mhm.
it's coming. Has everyone figured this out yet? No. Certainly SAP's talking about it. I saw some presentations from the AI team at SAP led by Philip Herzig where they're demonstrating a lot of this. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how agentic, agent-based AI starts to manage tasks. And I'm very keen to see how this works.
It's still very early on in this space where a lot of SAP customers are thinking about using it, but how do we really find a use case that is really beneficial to the organization, at least from a investment standpoint, the time standpoint, and the value add you get as a result of this application,
Yeah, and
basically.
I think the potential challenge with agentic AI is it also has to be reasonable from a what is this agent's tasks? One of the things that we all know about the SAP ecosystem is we exist here because our businesses are complicated. Someone used to say to me, if you didn't need to run SAP, you wouldn't. Right? So, most of the organizations that run SAP are of a sufficient size and scale and complexity, whether that be that they're multiple businesses running, they have international components, the business makes a complicated product that has a lot of configuration to it, right? There's reasons why these organizations are running SAP. So that kind of then begets the next point, which is an agent based AI is going to have to be fairly complicated in order to handle all of those different particulars of a business. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch how organizations slice that down to make it so that they can demonstrate some success early days without making the agent so complicated that they basically can't function. Even some of this agentic AI we talk about, that seems like really simple. Like, hey, I want to go out to eat at a restaurant tonight. Have Agentic AI make a reservation. When you break that down, well, how does it do that? What type of food do you want? I don't know. Maybe Italian, maybe
Yeah.
French, maybe American. What about what time do you want to eat? How far away do you want to go? And so much of that is left to our brains to just on a whim we make these decisions. How do you have that conversation with
There you
Agentic
go.
AI, right? Where it says, "Hey,
There you go.
here's a reservation at an Italian restaurant at 6:30." Nah. Well, 6:45? Nah. Well, what do you want? Not Italian. Well, what do you want instead? I don't know. French? No. Right? You want a burger? Nah, I don't feel like a burger tonight. I mean, oh my God. I mean, it's exhausting.
Now let's take a step up, right? Let's talk about from SAP customers. You know, everybody's getting on this journey. What word of advice would you have for your SAP customers when they get further into the journey with AI? Like, what are the things that they should be looking out
First and
for?
foremost, take the time to experiment, right? I mean, if you're not using these AI tools every day, start. And this has taken me a little bit of time to warm up to. I'm finding now that I have enough road underneath my tires that it's hard for me to do new things because I'm fairly, set in my ways. But if I don't use these tools to do things, I'm not learning. And so, as an example, I'm recording a podcast tomorrow with a couple of fellow ASUG board members. And last night I needed to get them some prep materials. I uploaded 3 or 4 documents into Claude. And I said, please look at these 3 documents. And I need to brief the podcast participants on what they say. And it looked at all 3 documents and it coughed up a pretty darn good summary. Perfect? No. Pretty good? Yes. Was it easier that I didn't have to go and look at each document and figure out what to say. I could take a look at its summarization and determine if that was something that I wanted, that I thought was accurate and something that I thought we could share. And the answer was it was pretty good. That was a great experiment. And then I said, okay, now create the podcast questions. And it did it. Now, are we using all of
Yeah.
them? No. Did it give me at least a
Yeah.
starting point? 100%. And by the way, for the people out there who's like, "Oh my god, he put that into Claude. Oh my god, what about the security things?" We own a subscription to Claude, so it was in a subscription. It was in our protected space. It was public information, so, but you gotta think about those things, right?
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that you hit upon is time to value, right? When you look at these tools, these technology aspects of how it can make things faster, better. But it brings up another point. Like when you look at these use cases, everything is about data, what you're feeding into the model. So, from a data perspective, I know a lot of customers, doesn't matter SAP or the technologies, and especially in SAP, you know, either struggle with clean, governed data and kind of makes it very difficult. So what's your take on that in that space, especially when they are ready to go to the AI journey, but they have some work to do,
I think
right?
there's a tremendous amount of work to do on this, and this kinda comes back to a part of our earlier dialogue, that I think that data has to be right? If we're gonna succeed in this future AI-enabled world, the data that is being accessed from your SAP systems, whether through some sort of RAG or however you're doing it, has to be accurate. So the archiving perspective of this has to be right. And, also what has to be right is your ability to get master data correct. So if you have the same customer in your SAP system, this is an easy example, 5 times, right? Well, you now have increased by factors the likelihood that the answer that pops back is wrong. So, we've been talking about this for a long time that your SAP data has to be accurate, has to be right. And SAP data is very accurate at the time that it was entered. I think this is one of the brilliant things about SAP and where we as SAP, professionals spend so much time is getting the data into the system correctly from the get go. Problem is, it
Yeah.
doesn't age so well, right? It's not like a fine wine. It can sometimes get a little stale and old. And if we're not also getting it
Mm.
broomed out, the challenge we run into is it could be part of a hallucination that we're not aware of. And if all of a sudden people are looking
Yep.
at this data and making broader based decisions on it, and the decision process is flawed and the data is flawed, we could be making a lot of really bad decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Data and analytics is very near and dear to me. So I know that his whole conversation about getting the data clean, having that value around data, right, which drives a lot of those results out of the tools that we want to,
Yeah,
right, especially.
this is all going to come down to data at the end of the day, right? The data wins and the accuracy of the data wins. And the more that
Yep.
we're going to use these tools to summarize and roll up, the higher the risk that that summary is inaccurate because the data underneath it isn't right. We
Right.
had this conversation in an ASUG executive exchange forum last week. And I think most people are starting to recognize that if you have been deferring your archiving routines, now might be a good time to get some of that back under control.
Yeah,
Most of
absolutely.
the models right now, the LLMs, right, are based on data that doesn't that you know books fueling research reports fueling these LLMs. That data has been around for a long time and has stood the test of time. Most of our SAP data,
Yeah.
has to be thought of through a very specific lens. But I think it's critical, 100% critical.
Yeah. So let's take it down a notch, right? From an ASUG perspective, how have you seen ASIC members approaching real-time data and analytics and moving to the cloud? And I know ASIC does a lot of research on this. What have you seen? What do you see this year?
So I think, almost everyone is having cloud conversations, which is the beginning of this, because I don't think you can innovate at scale if you're not thinking about moving into the cloud. You
Yep.
know, the other thing is that most of these solutions, if you think about the innovation curve, most of these solutions are going to appear first in the latest editions of your software. So if you can't start innovating at a
Hmm.
faster and faster cycle, move out of the stair step you and I discussed earlier, moving to a constant innovation framework, you're going to find yourself further and
Hmm.
further behind, because if you want to take advantage of innovation at scale at the time it's released or near to the time it's released, you need to be on the latest versions of software. The hard reality of most of our ecosystem is we are not. And if we
Yeah.
are not, that's where this stuff is going to appear first. Will it make it down to other versions of the software? Yes. Is it going to be on SAP's first order priority to do that? No, they're going to want to make sure where they get it out to market fast. And they're going to look at their latest
Yep.
versions of the software to do that where they're the most comfortable. There's this question, why can't I run AI in my on prem data center? Well, you could,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to do all of that lift by yourself. And that becomes a very
Absolutely.
costly exercise that, unless you're the bigs of the bigs, is probably outside of your budget to do that. So if you want to do this with some
Mm.
degree of economy, you have to be in the cloud, you have to decustomize, you have to think about your SAP implementation as a SaaS service, push accountability and responsibility for code and business process back to SAP, right? I mean, I think that, what has AI told me loud and clear at a volume level of 11? We as SAP customers now more than ever need to stop customizing and moving responsibility for code back to SAP. Because if we don't, we are never going to be able to keep up.
I
And
think.
in addition to that, that many of us over these years have outsourced our application maintenance services. We rely
Mhm.
on consultants to do most of the work we need done, right? So
Mm.
we're not even in control of the productive resources necessary to make this stuff a reality. We are project
Yep.
managers, we are business analysts, right? We don't necessarily know how
Yep.
to write code to do this. And if we're going to have to rely on
For
outside
sure.
resources every time we make one of these moves, that's going to be super costly and super slow.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think the ASEC community hears that, right? Uh,
But we have a lot in our ASUG community, right, who have been around for a long time that says, well, my job is an ABAP programmer. What do you want me to do next? Or I'm a basis person and I don't like this. And I'm like, you are some of the people that are in the best position to retool and relearn. We're all going to have to relearn. And, is your business's joy in life to have you produce more ABAP code or figure out how to get that ABAP code out, move it to SAP and say, congratulations, SAP, you're now responsible for this. Here's what I need this business process to do, right? and using
Yeah.
using ASUG to help you influence that business process instead of you saying, well, I'm going to just take it and twist it to my own needs. Even with me saying that, I still think that there's a lot of distance that SAP has to travel. By the way, I don't think they have this figured out.
Yeah.
I don't think that they look at this and they go, yep, we got this. You just, trust us. No, I think in certain areas they have this well done. In other areas they do not. So what's the best thing we can do? Help them get there faster, influence them, participate in your ASUG chapter meetings, have a voice, talk about where you're hitting challenges. How do we need SAP to make better business processes? How are we going to use the tools that they have, like LeanIX and
Yeah.
Signavio, to help drive some of this? That's to me where this is going to need to happen. I would much prefer to have SAP struggle to keep up with business process than have 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 customers do it on their own. It doesn't scale.
No, it doesn't. And I think, and that's a fair point, right? This is where the value of ASUG comes in, and I mean the journey is long, but the path is there for us to
I
follow, right?
Yeah,
And that's the
I
key
think the
piece of
journey
it.
is long and the journey is more important than ever. It's time to get off the couch and go out and start walking, and then when you can walk, you can run, then you can sprint. And I think that's kind of the message that we're giving as ASUG is this isn't going to slow down for you. You're going to have to catch up to it.
I think, and that's the message a lot of people are hearing loud and clear now, especially 2025 has brought in that whole concept of either you go along with it or you're going to be left behind.
Or at some point you're going to have to catch up, and the question is how much lifting are you going to have to do to get there? I don't think
Yeah.
this is easy. I don't think that there's a magic pill we can swallow, that cleans us all up and we're all perfect.
No, for sure. And I think I know we talked about a lot of things today, and we can keep on talking, and the journey keeps on. Is it's a journey,
It's a
like you
journey.
said. It's
Yeah.
never ending. But what is the one key takeaway that you want to leave with the listeners today
One key takeaway,
as we wrap up?
it,
Yeah.
spend time experimenting and learning this stuff. Get comfortable being uncomfortable with these tools. Use them. Think about how your business can benefit from them. Spend some time, in BTP learning how to access these LLMs through your BTP interface. If you're having a challenge getting a business case written to move from your ECC environment to S4, talk to us at ASUG. We will help you with that. Go to a chapter meeting and ask others how they made that investment work. Spend some time, if you don't have a license for Copilot, where you and I started this afternoon, ask your IT
Yeah.
counterparts to have access to Copilot. Use it. Ask it questions. Engage in iterative prompts. These are things I think the faster we get comfortable with these technologies, the better off we as technologists will have light bulbs go off and say, oh, I know I get how I can really
Yeah.
put Agentic AI to work. Right. And I'm not going to listen to just,
Absolutely.
Microsoft, talk about it or SAP talk about it. I actually have some ideas, and these are good ideas, and I'm excited. I'm excited to share them. Get it out of the stands and on the field.
And who better do it? I mean, I think I love your closing, right? Especially when you're looking at your own business and your own technology and your way of doing things. Who better can come up with a solution or see the applications of these Copilot, Gemini, no matter what, I mean, type of tools you can use, but these are the ways you can innovate, right? By looking at the processes in
Someone told me
place.
that they set up 2 agentic AI bots, and the 2 of them conducted a podcast, and it was pretty good. So, Mustansir, I'm worried that next time you and I meet, it's not going to be you or I. It's going to be our agentic AI counterparts,
Version of us,
some
right?
version of us.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's here. It's going to be here at some point, so might as well embrace
Yeah,
it, right?
absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Tech Driven Business, brought to you by Innovative Solution Partners. Embracing innovation is no longer an option, but really a necessity for enterprise success. Geoff's key takeaway: proactive experimentation with AI is crucial for SAP users to discover its business benefits. Engage with tools like Copilot and Joule. Participate in ASUG and push for cloud migration to stay ahead of the rapid technological changes. We would love to hear from you. Continue the conversation by connecting with me on LinkedIn or X. Learn more about Innovative Solution Partners and schedule a free consultation by visiting isolutionpartners.com. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Information is in the show notes.